Hey folks, welcome back to Sidetrack's Board Game Channel. It's been a while since I posted anything on here. There's pretty good reasons for that. I don't want to say excuses, but there's pretty good reasons, I think. One of the things that I think is hardest to get used to, and you might hear Dolly in the background. Dolly's our new dog that we got a few months ago. So that's one reason. She takes up a little bit of our time these days. But one of the things I think you learn as a parent is that and your life changes from when you don't have kids to when you have kids, is that sometimes your time is not your own anymore. And so, yesterday we had a cross country meet, a football game, a soccer match, 4 trips to town to drop kids off and pick them up from different things. And so, time becomes pretty precious, and the things that you want to do, you got to find time to squeeze them in here and there, in the half an hour or an hour that you might have in between different activities and doing dishes and making food and things like that. It's just life tends to fill up the hours. So we haven't been playing a lot of games at my house. My older boys, they love to play games, and we play a lot of board games. My younger kids aren't into board games quite as much. They're a little more, that's Dolly bumping the camera. They seem to be a little more enamored with their electronics. And my daughter, she's a huge reader. Virginia loves to read books. So anytime she gets free time, her nose is in a book, which is a great thing. I love it. I think that's wonderful. So when I closed down the shop at Sidetracks down in Elwood City, one of the things that I did is I pared down my game collection. I don't know what the final number was. We were over 400, maybe close to 425 games. And I pared that down. I cut it probably in about half. So again, I'm not exactly sure how many games I have right now, maybe 200, 225, something like that. And there were a lot of reasons for doing that. One was because I just didn't have the space at home to bring all that stuff home, and didn't want to bring it all home again after taking it down to the shop. And 2 was, a lot of those games, the only reason I got them in the first place was because I knew I wanted to do a board game shop someday. And I knew they were games that other people would want to play. And they weren't necessarily things that I liked anyway. So sold a lot of games, gave some to Goodwill, gave a lot away to other people who had come into the shop and enjoyed the game. And so I'm like, here, you enjoyed this game more than me, so go ahead and take it. So the other day I was looking at my shelf of shame, which has been pared down quite a bit, because a lot of the games that had been sitting around for years and I just never got around to it, I'm like, you know what, if I haven't played this game in the last 5 or 6 years, it doesn't look like there's any time soon that I'm going to get to play it. And so there's no sense just leaving it sit there on the shelf. I might as well get rid of it and hope that somebody else enjoys it. So I pared down my shelf of shame a lot, but there's still 20 to 30 games that I have that haven't been opened, and haven't played them, or maybe I opened them and punched them or even read the rule book, but just haven't got around to playing them. So I thought I'd do a top 10 list. These are the top 10 games that I'm really looking forward to playing off my shelf of shame as soon as I can find the time to squeeze them in. Number 10 is a game that I picked up at Gen Con this year, so it's pretty new to the house. And one of the cool things at Gen Con, they have a consignment area over in one of the Marriott hotels where people can sell their used games. And I love picking up used games. It doesn't bother me at all if they have dings and dents or scratches. If somebody's already played the heck out of it and either they didn't like it or they just don't enjoy playing it as much anymore, I love picking up secondhand games. It's a cheap way to expand your collection and find some older games that might even be hard to find. So my number 10 game is Alhambra, and this is a very well-known game, has won many awards. I just never got around to playing it. I never had a copy of it. And so when I saw it on the consignment shop thing, I don't remember what I paid for, $8 or $10. I'm like, oh man, I got to grab that because I've heard it's a really great game. So I'm looking forward to trying Alhambra. My number 9 game is a game that I picked up for Grady a couple years ago, and we just haven't got around to playing it. I've read the rules 3 or 4 times in anticipation and hoping that we were going to get to play it, and then we still didn't get to play it. And so I'll end up having to read the rules again before we do get around to playing it. But that game is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Now, there's a big grandiose game called Terraforming Mars that I just don't really have any desire to play because it's just too long and too involved. But this one, from what I've heard, distills that down, and it's more of a card-based game with some deck building in it, a little bit like Dominion deck building. So I'm really looking forward to playing Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. I think once we play it, we're gonna really, really like it. We just haven't got around to it yet. The number 8 game I'm looking forward to off my shelf of shame is another one that I picked up at the consignment shop at Gen Con this year, and it was only a couple bucks, and that game is called Cape Horn. And my guess is that it was only a couple bucks because it's probably not a good game. I looked over the rules when Levi and I were in the hotel, and I don't know, I don't have high hopes for it, but the theme caught my attention. You know, I'm a history teacher, so I love historical themes and I love nautical themes. I was in the Navy Reserve for a couple years, so you know, the theme just really caught my attention. And I actually like Rio Grande games a lot. We've had a lot of luck with some of their stuff. It tends to be a little older. You know, the artwork maybe is a little out of date and stuff. And this is an old game, but it was still new in the shrink. And it looks like there's these little wind tokens that you put out, and you're sailing around Cape Horn, I think it is. And you're basically pushing your ships around, and you're trying to use the wind to push the other ships out of the way. And so, I don't know, it's sort of a weird theme that most people probably wouldn't dig, and I'm not convinced that it's going to be a great game, but I'm really looking forward to trying it because it's something that's unique, and I've never seen anything like it before. The number 7 game on my shelf of shame that I'm really looking forward to is another very well-known game. It came out a few years ago. It was all the rage for a little while, and that's Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is a big, heavy game, Chex Game Edition. They make code names and a few other games that are very well known and popular. My buddy Mark gave this to me as a birthday gift a few years ago, and I know he's played it and he really likes it. So I think I'm gonna really love this game. It's a game that has there's a little more to it, so I know I need to devote some time to learning the rules and getting it to the table, and I just haven't had that opportunity yet, but I got a feeling I'm really gonna like this one once I get it out. My number 6 game is one that I actually bought for Kyle a couple years ago. And I'm not really into playing solo games much. Typically I have, a bunch of kids around, and I don't have too much trouble finding players. But with Kyle being in the Air Force, I knew he was gonna be away and might have time to himself and be looking for stuff to do at home. So I heard about this really highly regarded solo game. This game's only for one player. It's like solitaire. But it came out and everybody said it was one of the best solo games around. So I picked up Under Falling Skies, and Kyle's flying airplanes now and too busy to be playing games because he's working so much. So he hasn't had a chance to try it yet, but I've been thinking about pulling it out of the box and learning it so that when he comes home I could teach it to him, and then maybe he could take it with him. But my understanding of the game is it's a little bit like a Space Invaders type thing, where these guys are coming down trying to attack you, and you're flying fighter planes and trying to defend yourself. So I think Kyle would really like the theme, and I'm interested in trying it out too, just because I don't play solo games. I'm interested in kind of learning more about them and seeing what it's all about, and I think this theme is one that we could really get into. My number 5 game on the list is not actually a whole game, it's an expansion. And this is one that I picked up for Joanne at Gen Con this year. And Joanne is a big fan of the game Parks, and so am I. I love it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And Levi and I were checking out their booth, and there's a few expansions to this game. The one, Nightfall, is one that everybody seems to like, but one of the reasons I like Parks is that it's very simple and streamlined, and it's not hard to play. And sometimes when you add expansions to games, it makes it more complicated. It adds more rules, and the gamer folks like that because it adds more depth to the game. But a lot of times when I'm wanting to play these games, it's because it's simple and streamlined. Cascadia is a perfect example. That's one that I almost bought the expansion for at Gen Con this year, and I looked at it, I'm like, I don't want Cascadia to be any more complicated. The times that I want to play that game are at the end of the night when, you know, I don't want to have to burn my brain thinking about too many things, and it's just simple and relaxing and streamlined. And that's one of the reasons I like Parks. And so we picked up this expansion for Parks, thinking that it might add a little bit to the game but not make it too complicated. And the owner of Keymaster Games was there, and the designer of Parks was there, and they autographed our expansion for us, which was pretty cool. And actually Levi sat next to the designer of the game on his flight from Indianapolis back to Philadelphia, and he got to talk to the guy and stuff. So that's pretty cool. We have a little bit of a story to go with our expansion. All right, I really like Euro games where there's not tons of conflict between the players, where there's multiple paths to victory, there's multiple ways to score points. A lot of times you're pushing cubes around on the board. You know, some reviewers I listened to have said that they get tired of trading in the Mediterranean games and stuff. I tend to like that kind of stuff. So when I heard about this game, and first thing I heard about this game is it's a great game, but it looks pretty boring. Like the artwork is kind of boring, the color schemes are kind of boring, but it's a really, really good game. And everybody that talked about it said, despite the fact that it didn't look good, it was good. And I thought, well, it must be a good game then, if they're still willing to play it, even though they don't like the art and stuff. So when Game Nerds had their Nerds Day a couple years ago, I picked this up, and it's called Hansa Teutonica. And I didn't even do Game Nerds this year, Nerds Day this year, because I didn't want to be tempted to buy a bunch of games that were going to sit on the shelf, because this is a perfect example. This is a game that I've been wanting to play for a long time. It's been sitting on my shelf for 2 years now because I just haven't got around to playing it. But it's another one that once I play it, I have a feeling this might be in my top 10 games of all time from what I've heard of it. It's just a matter of figuring it out and getting it to the table. All right, Dolly. So I'm really looking forward to Hansa Teutonica. My number 3 game is a game that I just picked up in a trade off of Board Game Geek. And BoardGameGeek.com is an awesome website that if you want to know anything about board games, you can go look it up on the Geek. And you can actually enter your collection into a database on there, and it'll keep track of every game you have. You can rate your games. You can, there's forums. There's just so much there. But one of my favorite things about Board Game Geek is their trade manager thing. And it's like an algorithm that you can click on games that are in your collection that you're willing to get rid of, that you don't really want anymore, and other people can do the same. And then you basically click the button and it'll try to match you up with other people who are getting rid of games that you want, because you have your wish list on there, and then they want games that you're willing to get rid of. And so over the years, I've made a few trades on there, maybe a dozen or so, but I've extended offers, or I've thrown trades out there way more times than that and just never got any response from people. But this was the first time ever that somebody sent me a trade just out of the blue, kind of a cold call, and said, hey, would you be interested in making this deal? And I was like, sure, absolutely. So I picked up Undaunted North Africa, which is a World War II game, and I traded away Seven Wonders Architects, which is a game I picked up on Nerds Day, the same time I bought Hansa Teutonica. Seven Wonders Architects was okay. I mean, it was very highly regarded, when it came out. It was just too simple. Like, I'd much rather play the real Seven Wonders than Seven Wonders Architects. It wasn't a bad game at all. It just wasn't something that we enjoyed playing because there just wasn't enough interesting decisions in the game. So Undaunted Africa is from North Africa is from a series of games around World War II. My buddy Mark has Undaunted Normandy, which I haven't got a chance to play with them yet. This is the second one in the series. There's also an Undaunted Stalingrad, which is like a campaign game. So when you're fighting, you know, the Germans and the Russians are fighting for Stalingrad, and the results of one game, so if you bomb out a certain area, the beginning of the next game will start with that area bombed out. So maybe you bombed it out to get rid of the opposing force, but now in the next game you have to move into that area and you don't have any cover anymore. So that game intrigues me a lot because I haven't played any campaign games, but I wanted to start with one of the more basic versions. My understanding is Undaunted Normandy is sort of the base game. And this adds a little bit more to it because you start to have mechanized weapons and vehicles involved and stuff. So when I had a chance to pick this up in a trade, I was like, absolutely, I can't wait to play it. It's kind of a card-driven war game, so it's not super complex like a lot of war games are. I love, well, I'll talk about it in a minute. There's another World War II game that I've been getting into that I absolutely love, and I hope this is going to be another one. All right, the number 2 game that I'm looking forward to playing off my shelf of shame is another one that I picked up off the consignment area at Gen Con. So I had a lot of luck at Gen Con this year. I spent maybe 25 or 30 bucks on games and picked up some games that I'm really looking forward to. And I love train games. I love the theme of trains. Some of the first games my brothers and I got into when we were playing, when we started into this hobby playing board games, were train games. So when I saw this particular game, just the box intrigued me for one thing because it's huge. It might be the biggest game box that I have in terms of the width, and that's Rails of New England. I don't know if you can tell, but this box is like really, really big. And again, Rio Grande Games, I tend to like a lot of their stuff. Even though some of it seems a little dated at times, I'm okay with that. I'm dated too, you know. But this game looks awesome. It's got I'm a sucker for games that have maps, no matter what the theme, but railroad games in particular too. So I can't wait to give this one a shot. I'm hoping me and my brother Brian can get it to the table one of these days. I got to sit down and read the rules. I haven't even looked at the rules yet and figured it out, but I'm really excited about Rails of New England. Okay, the number 1 game that I'm excited to get to the table from my shelf of shame. I mentioned a minute ago that I've been getting into a World War II game, and it's a game that's been in my collection for many years. We tried it out a few times and it just didn't hit. I think maybe because my kids were younger and because we played the first scenario or two, which are really the basic scenarios to get you into the game, but it gets way better the more you play it. And that game is Memoir 44. And once I started playing this game, Grady and I started playing, and then I immediately went out and bought some more expansions for the game. So I've got 3 expansions here now, and I also, off of grip mats online, I went and bought some custom neoprene mats with the board printed on them. And one of the ones that I picked up was Operation Overlord. And what you can do is you can put either put multiple copies of the game together, because this is a head-to-head game. It's a 2-player game. Typically what you do is maybe I'll play the Allies and my opponent plays the Germans, and the game doesn't take long to play, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and then we reset and we switch sides, and I'll play the Germans and then my opponent plays the Allies, and we add our scores together, because the scenarios are not really balanced. They tend to be more historically accurate than balanced. So in some of the scenarios, like the Omaha Beach, the Germans pretty much win every single time. But when you play both sides and add them together, essentially you're like, I need to beat you by more than you beat me by. So even though it's not balanced, it works. So we've been playing through the base game, through all the different campaigns or the scenarios and that. But then you got basically the North Africa campaign adds some more to it. And then the Ardennes, this is the Battle of the Bulge essentially. add some more to it. And the thing I like about this game, I was very intimidated by the game when I first got it, because there's a lot of different terrain, there's a lot of different units, but the thing I love about it is that each scenario just adds one more thing. So you gradually learn the game as you play. And the first one is basic, simple, then you add in the hedgerows terrain. And then, you know, the next one, maybe you add in artillery pieces. And so each game you're adding one more component and learning how that particular part of the game works. And then gradually you're expanding. And so as the scenarios go on, they get more and more interesting. What I need to get is the Operation Overlord expansion. Because as I mentioned, as I started to talk before I got off on a tangent, Operation Overlord allows you to take this 2-player game and turn it into a multiplayer game. And so I can be, say, the general, I can be Eisenhower, and I can have 3 generals on my team, and I'm giving them the cards, which are the orders that they're going to use to control their sector of the battlefield. And then the Germans on the other side will have an overall commander, and then they'll have different generals who are leading certain sectors of the battlefield. But you either need 2 copies of the game, because what you do is you place the board out side by side. It doubles the size of the battlefield. Or I got this giant mat from Grip Mats, so it's basically the same size as 2 boards put together. But I need to get the Operation Overlord campaign that gives me all the extra pieces that I need to play it with a bigger group. So what I really want to do is start teaching this game, teaching the basics to a few buddies. And so that once I get that Operation Overlord battle pack or expansion, then enough people will know how to play that we can dive in and play an Overlord scenario where, you know, it might be 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, and we can play the big giant map, which I think would be awesome. So I'm really looking forward to playing more Memoir 44 and to seeing what all these different expansions have to offer. Okay, folks, so those are my top 10 games that I'm really looking forward to getting off my shelf of shame. We've been playing games down at Double Looks Games in Elport. If any of these games interest you and you want to hook up at our friendly local game store and play one of them, let me know and we'll set up a time to do it. I'd love to get them to the table and try these games out. See ya. Okay, folks, I got done making the video, and there's one more game that I wanted to mention. You might have seen it up here on the shelf before, and I'm going to call this an honorable mention because I don't consider this necessarily shelf of shame because I've played this game a lot. Now, the thing is, it's been probably 40 years since I played it, so maybe it counts as a new game. But this game is Scrabble Duplicate. And this is a game that I played with my mom and my brother a ton, especially my mom, when I was growing up. And I loved it. We played a lot of cards when I was a kid. I never really liked Scrabble because my mom kicked our butts at every time we played. She would always be able to make these 2 or 3 letter words that, you know, used a J on a double word space or a triple letter space or something. And she just killed us. So it wasn't really that fun. Scrabble Duplicate is so cool because it takes Scrabble and it flips it on its head. So in Scrabble, everybody has different letters and you're using the same board. And sometimes, you know, luck of the draw, you're just kind of screwed because you get bad letters or you get letters that aren't worth many points. Scrabble Duplicate does the exact opposite. It's the first roll and write game that I've ever played, or not really roll and write, I guess it's a flip and write. But in this game, you put all the letters out in the center of the table. So everybody has the same letters to work with, but you have your own board on paper and you're basically making your own Scrabble board. So other people can't mess you up. You can build off of your own. And so it's the exact inverse of Scrabble. And I loved this game growing up, even though my mom still beat us most of the time anyway. I just liked the design of it so much better. It seemed like a fairer game and a more interesting game. And I mentioned it to my buddy Toby because his daughter Anna, who would come to the shop and play games a lot, she loved the word game Bananagrams. And I was telling him about Scrabble Duplicate and how I loved this game as a kid, and it was my favorite word game. But I didn't think it was in print. I've never seen it. You might find it at a Goodwill or, you know, some thrift shop somewhere. Well, Toby came in a couple weeks later and he had this new in shrink Scrabble duplicate. I have no idea where he got it because I don't think this game is in print. You can't find it anymore. So I have no idea where he got it, but I almost hesitate to take it out of the shrink wrap because it's like in pristine condition, and I love this game so much growing up. But I can't wait to get it back to the table and play it again and teach it to my kids. I hope it's as good as I remember. So I'm not counting this one as a shelf of shame because I have played this game many, many times, but it's been a long, long time since I've played it. So I am looking forward to getting this one off my shelf and getting it to the table again. See ya.